right now, a Georgia Democrat takes Republicans to task.
U.S. senators that are afraid to speak out
over tax breaks for the wealthy and cuts to Medicaid.
Fulton County's district attorney defends her record. We sit down with the journalist who interviewed Fani Willis.
And we look at the growing field to be Georgia's next lieutenant governor and the growing movement to eliminate Georgia's state income tax.
Georgia families are feeling the crunch.
All right now on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Hey, good morning and welcome to the Georgia Vote. So with Congress on its summer break, members of the House and Senate, they are visiting their constituents and some are getting an earful.
On Thursday, Georgia Democratic Congresswoman Nikema Williams faced voters who were worried about the future of programs they rely on. Williams co-hosted a town hall Thursday night with Atlanta City Councilwoman Andrea Boone. The event at Atlanta's Jackson Memorial Baptist Church focused on budgetary issues, including the future of Medicaid. The discussion lasted about 2 hours, and Williams addressed the many seniors in the audience concerned about another popular program, Social Security.
Democrats want to protect and enhance Social Security, not gut it, because you've earned it. This program isn't a handout. It's a lifeline that you've earned with every paycheck. Babies from the daycare.
Congresswoman Williams said she would like to host another town hall specifically about potential cuts to Medicaid because there were so many questions about it.
There are also some questions about who will win Georgia's statewide elections in 2026. And with Burt Jones, the current lieutenant governor, running for governor, his current job is open next year. And we're definitely getting a lot of candidates testing the waters. And the latest to jump in is State Senator Blake Tillery, a Republican from Vidalia. One of his priorities, eliminating the state income tax. Tillery says that's a great way to help working families.
And we, as the government here in Georgia, can give them an automatic 5% raise by reducing and eliminating Georgia's state income tax. That's something we ought to do for Georgia families.
And wait, there's more. State Representative David Clark, a Republican from Beaufort, he joined the race Tuesday, touting his experience as a Green Beret and being battle-tested. He also wants to eliminate the state income tax. So let's take a look at the growing list of Lieutenant Governor hopefuls. So far, on the Republican side are State Senators John Kennedy, Steve Gooch, and Tillery, as well as State Representative Clark. State Senator Josh McLaurin is in the Democratic primary field.
Well, Bob Trammell rose to be minority leader in the Georgia State House before losing a close re-election bid in 2020. Now the Democrat is back, recently launching a campaign for Attorney General. We sit down with Trammell in this week's Sunday Conversation.
I read somewhere that in 2018, you were the only Georgia State House Democrat who represented a district that was won by Governor Brian Kemp and President Donald Trump. Is that right?
Well, that's what they said. It was true, and it was true when I was in the General Assembly.
You were a Democrat representing a district that had gone for Republicans in the presidential race and the gubernatorial race. That would have made you a bit of a unique legislator at the General Assembly.
My district was very much a competitive district where we had Democrats, Republicans, independents, and it definitely affected the way that I approached my service to the General Assembly. We talked about things that mattered, no matter whether you were a Republican or independent or a Democrat. The issues we talked about were accessible. Because at the end of the day, people care about health care. They want to send their kids to good school. They want to make sure they're safe in their homes.
Why do you want to be Georgia's next Attorney General?
Well, I think that the job of the Attorney General is to protect people. And the thing for me as a lawyer and an American citizen is a concern about where we are in this country with the rule of law. And I think people are looking for, in their elected officials, someone who can make their lives better. So I'll be an Attorney General who will defend the Constitution, make life more affordable, keep people safe, and protect our rights.
In your view, what's the biggest problem facing Georgia right now?
We really have two different Georgias, and we have a situation where a lot of Georgians aren't benefiting. They feel that they're left behind. And we've got to do a better job as a state of being able to provide that access and upward opportunity for all Georgians, no matter what your zip code is.
When you talk about two different Georgias, are you referring specifically to rich versus poor, rural versus urban, something else?
Well, I think that it often cuts geographically, right? That's historically what people have talked about when they've talked about the two Georgians. But I think that it's equally true that there is a separation economically, that you have Georgians who are enjoying a lot of prosperity, but you also have Georgians who have not benefited and are feeling left behind.
How do you fix it?
The way you fix it is you keep showing up and you keep trying to bridge that gap, and you don't stick your head in the sand and pretend that it doesn't exist.
Do you think some state elected leaders right now are sticking their heads in the sand?
I think that that state elected leaders have sort of fallen into a pattern of pursuing policies that aren't really seeking to address that issue and bridge the gap. I think that they're chasing a lot of times the political story or issue of the day that comes out of Washington, D.C., and that's not helping Georgians.
And there is much more to our conversation with Bob Trammell. You can see the entire interview streaming on 11 Alive Plus right now.
Hey, time now for our Politics Roundtable. Today we have Democratic strategist Fred Hicks, the founder and president of the Hicks Evaluation Group, which has worked with hundreds of political campaigns for nearly 20 years. Mark Roundtree, Republican strategist and pollster. He's also the founder of Landmark Communications and a veteran of Georgia campaigns and elections. And Shannon McCaffrey, who leads the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's team that covers the state capitol. Let's start with this AG race, the conversation that we just heard with Zach and Mr. Trammell. Fred, I want to start with you. A much different conversation than I had with Mr. Strickland on the Republican side a couple of weeks ago. What is your takeaway from how this race is shaping up right now?
So I think it's very interesting. I know Senator Strickland, and I think it's an interesting decision he's made to try to fashion himself after Donald Trump, when he really made his bones in the Senate as a consensus builder and someone who's very well liked. But I think on the Democratic side, while we have former Minority Leader Trammell, who's entering the race, I'm also hearing that the current House Minority Chair, Tanya Miller, who was elected just a couple of years ago, is planning on getting into this race. And so this is going to be really interesting, because you're going to have a former leader and a current leader. You can have two lawyers, obviously, as Attorney General, who will make this race very interesting. Republicans, as we showed on the screen, have a lot of candidates running for a lot of offices. The Democrats have been a little bit slower to get off there, but from what I'm hearing, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to see a lot of Democrats getting into different positions.
It'll be interesting to see if Miller gets in. Strickland says that he wants a Trump endorsement. It'll be interesting to see if the president puts his backing. The president did put his backing behind another big candidate.
Yeah, he did. We saw the president wade into Georgia's gubernatorial contest earlier this week, endorsing Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones in that race. Mark, how big of a difference maker is the Trump endorsement in the governor's race?
Well, it's been significant in a lot of races across the country, not just in Georgia. But the president has had more trouble in Georgia with his endorsements than maybe some other states. I mean, we have to remember that he certainly was not very favorable toward Secretary of State Raffensperger just 2 years ago. So I think it's a significant thing, but we're still so early in the race that, you know, Trump does have some impact now, but will it have an impact next May? Probably some.
There is more road ahead in the campaign cycle right now. Shannon, Mark brought up the track record of the President Trump endorsement in Georgia. We've seen it go different ways in 2018 versus 2022. The other big Republican endorsement many candidates try to get is the Governor Kemp endorsement. Mm-hmm. How big of a factor would that be in the governor's race?
Oh, I think the Kemp endorsement is probably, the key that everybody wants.
Even
the
more
golden
than President
key.
Trump, you think?
I don't know. I mean, Governor Kemp has higher approval ratings in Georgia than President Trump does, by a pretty good amount. I think Governor Kemp has crossover appeal, I think, too. So if you're talking about the general election, I think it would matter a little bit less in the primary. Right now, I feel like there are two lanes in the primary. There's the Trump lane and the not Trump lane. And Chris Carr, whether he likes it or not, is in the not Trump lane. So that will attract a certain number and a certain type of voter. But, I still think that Governor Kemp is more popular in Georgia. I think his opinion would matter more.
And it's important to note, Chris Carr, he has beat a Trump-backed candidate before during his Republican primary, John Gordon, by far. So he's done it before. Shannon, because you're from the AJC, You all broke some news this week, and we want to play that clip regarding Jeff Duncan. Let's listen to it.
I simply want to find the best way to represent the most number of Georgians I possibly can at some point if I ever run for higher office again. I'm not going to be pigeonholed into just saying and doing whatever you got to do to win a primary, and then hopefully you're not nicked and bruised badly enough to win a general.
And of course, that was coming out of asking if he would be considering running for office as a Democrat, which he said he would consider. Fred, is this the best thing for the Democratic Party?
Oh, well, that's the big discussion inside the party right now. So, it's going to be interesting. I understand that there's some polling in the field right now about that. The early polling was about the general election, but that's not really the battle for Jeff Duncan. He's got to figure out how to sell himself to a Democratic electorate that is about 63-64% African American, and that's similarly fashioned in terms of gender for women. And we're talking about hardcore Democratic voters who do not like Donald Trump and are not really feeling, so to speak, Republicans right now. So for someone who's just recently declared himself to be a Democrat, I think he has a tough road to hoe, but it's going to be really interesting because his argument is going to be, I'm the best person to win in November, and that could reach out to be appealing to some Democrats.
Can that carry the day in a primary, though, Mark?
Well, in a primary, he's going to have significant problems. In particular, and a lot of people are asking, was this even news that he supposedly switched party this week? Because frankly, a lot of people thought it had already happened when he endorsed Kamala Harris last year, and then when he spoke to the Democratic convention. So this might be the worst kept news in the country. I mean, he has been a Democrat for a while, for all intents and purposes, and he is probably a guy that I don't think will be accepted in the Democratic Party very well. He was a Republican elected official who got kicked out of the Republican Party. This isn't a guy who left voluntarily. They kicked him out, and so I think the people that would be voting on him are going to be very aware that they're sort of the last resort for him.
And he's probably considering that as he weighs in this race, which he has not declared yet. On that note, we're going to take a break. We'll see you all on the other side of the commercial.
And coming up later, we have our voice of the voter. It takes us to a farm in the middle of Atlanta and tells us what he hopes politicians are paying attention to.
Well, this week marks 2 years since Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis indicted Donald Trump and 18 others, accusing them of trying to overturn the 2020 election here in Georgia. Willis later faced legal trouble of her own after a romantic relationship with the lead special prosecutor, that was Nathan Wade, and that came to light. A Georgia Court of Appeals ruled it created an appearance of impropriety, disqualifying Willis and her entire office. Well, she is now appealing to the Georgia Supreme Court. In a sit-down interview, reporter Madeline Thigpen from Capital B Atlanta asked Willis about the case, and we spoke with Madeline about what she learned.
I wasn't asking a lot about the case specifics, more about just what I had been hearing from sources in the community about, just the fact that that case had taken so much time, so many resources, and, has been put on pause basically until 2029 at the earliest. And so all she really said was that the case is with the Supreme Court now. She has appealed the decision to have herself recused from the case, so the Georgia Supreme Court will have to make that decision. But yeah, we did not go into any further detail about that.
And that's interesting too, because people saw that. She was put on this pedestal, national attention with this case, so much work put into it, along with the YSL RICO trial, which I'll get to in a minute. But some people look at it and they say, well, it looks like you failed here. But she pushed back on that. Yeah, she definitely pushed back. And, the case was never fully adjudicated, so I don't know that we can say it was a failure or a success yet. We kind of have to wait. But at the same time, I do understand the frustrations of people who, are victims of crimes or who are accused of crimes who are saying, I need to get my case moving. Like, I have a right to have, a trial in a certain amount of time, and, that cannot happen until the case is indicted. Hey, back with panel now. You can catch more of that interview on 11alive.com. Something that Zach and I were talking about before the show is why hasn't a decision been made yet? I guess that's more of a question for the Georgia Supreme Court. But Mark, does this case have any legs here, you think?
I think at this point it is a pretty discredited case. I think I can only talk about it in the terms of the political aspect of it. not the legal, but from a political point of view, I think this has now been already sort of viewed, checked in, and it's been taken into account. I don't think it has a lot of political impact left on the state. The question now is going to be, should these defendants have to wait 5 years for a trial, or is that unconstitutional, basically? Is that a violation of their rights?
Fred, from a Democrat's perspective, and again, keeping this in the political frame, not in the legal context here, but for a period there, Democrats were putting a lot of political hope and effort in some ways behind this prosecution. There were Democrats across the country that viewed this as a focal point of campaigns. Obviously, this case is stalled right now. Was this a missed political opportunity for Democrats?
Well, I think politically it wasn't just Democrats who put a lot into this. I think there were there were independents. I think the Secretary of State who was really at the heart of that prosecution also had a particular take on it, and he's struck a completely different tone since that case appears to have fallen apart. So there was a general feeling politically that was the one case out of all, including New York and the federal case in Florida, that actually had meat to it and merit to it. And so when that fell apart, that really cleared the way for, I think, Donald Trump's reelection and for him to proclaim himself to be a victim of Democratic prosecutions across the country. So it certainly had consequences in the 24 election, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens when she herself is up in 28, if voters will remember that and think about that.
And I just say that Republicans use it to their advantage before it even, quote unquote, fell apart. Mind you, 5 minutes after his mugshot came out, there were T-shirts, coffee mugs, everywhere. It made him into this kind of popular figure as well. But I know we have other things to get to. We'll talk about it more in the extended panel.
Yeah, and we will, because there's a lot to discuss on that point. But we do want to cover some other topics as well, because we've spent a lot of time talking about the Republican dynamics in these primary races for governor and for Senate. But there, of course, are Democrats running too, particularly on the gubernatorial side of things in this primary. We know that President Donald Trump has endorsed Burt Jones. Quickly, Keisha Lance Bottoms, former Atlanta mayor, came out, Shannon, with a video criticizing that endorsement, trying to tie Burt Jones to President Trump's legacy and use it as an attack point. Is that a theme we're going to see play out through the rest of this campaign?
Oh, absolutely. On the Democratic side, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think you look at the Democrats' whole strategy seems to be to run against Trump, with the exception of Michael Thurmond, at least from what he's said so far since he got into the race. He mentioned that he wants to run more as a bridge builder, less of a bomb thrower, that he wants to work on bipartisanship. We'll see if that message resonates. It seems like Democrats want somebody who's going to go toe-to-toe with Trump and Republicans. But again, a lot of time until voters go to the booths.
Mark?
Well, in regard to Thurmond, actually, I do think that he has developed a reputation that's maybe a little different than most of the Democrats. He has developed a reputation of basically good government, not just partisan posturing. So I think he probably, and he represents 1 million people, and it's a heavily Democratic county. I think Herschel Walker carried, I want to say 9% of the vote in the runoff election, if I remember correctly, just for perspective here. There was a very Democratic county. So,
and not only that, he's extremely popular in his county.
Yes.
At that point, we're going to go to a quick break here. We'll see you all on the other side of the commercial. As Republicans jockey for the right to face Senator Jon Ossoff in 2026, the Georgia Democrat wants congressional Republicans to work across the aisle to prevent health insurance premiums in Georgia from going up.
Senator Ossoff says the increases will happen because Republicans refuse to extend Affordable Care Act benefits in President Trump's budget bill. He wants the GOP to now reverse course.
We're talking 20%, 30%, 40% increases in premiums, health insurance premiums per year. We're talking about thousands of dollars per year in increased health insurance premiums. And when folks can't make their household finances work already with rent or the mortgage and the car payment and gas and groceries, the last thing Georgia families need right now is to be paying thousands of dollars more per year for their health insurance.
Now, on the other side, supporters of the Republican efforts say that many of the expansions and flexibilities in enrollment and verification President Joe Biden introduced into the Affordable Care Act, they say, also opened it up to more fraud, mainly by insurance brokers. Well, an urban farmer shows us how he is growing community in the middle of Atlanta. Our Voice of the Voter is up next. We say it every week, you can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters. This week, we met up with Nori Ichgoran at his farm located in a place you might not expect. This looks like we're way out in the country, but we're right in the middle of Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
Do people ever come out and say, wow, I never expected all of this here?
All the time, yeah. They come out and they're just shocked that this little oasis is back here.
You say oasis.
Yeah.
Is that what it feels like to you?
That's exactly what it feels like. When I come through the gates, I'm like, wow, this is epic. I think food security is important, and I always thought that growing my food in my backyard was important to me.
I can tell you put a lot of heart into it.
Yeah. Blood, sweat, and tears.
There are probably some days where there's a lot of sweat.
Yeah, a lot of tears.
What do you love about it?
Producing for myself. And engaging with the community that comes out here, meeting all the people that are interested in this type of lifestyle, and showing my kids.
When you look at the state of politics right now, what's the number one issue you hope these candidates address?
Well, I'm not necessarily the biggest political person. I think that food security is the biggest thing in my opinion, and increasing the local availability of our food and education is important to me because I have kids.
What worries you the most?
Education, my kids. I want to future-proof my kids, and I don't necessarily think that the education system is caught up to the pace that we're going right now. Technology is like a Lamborghini speeding on a flat ground, and sometimes I feel like the school system might be like trying to go uphill on a bicycle.
We always end with this question. What are you most optimistic about?
I am most optimistic about our local government. I see a lot of council members, local politicians that are boots on the ground.
Sounds like in an era where so much attention is paid to politicians who spend their time in D.C., you think the answer is folks who are right here locally.
Most definitely. Those are the people that we can shake hands with and talk to and show up at our neighborhood planning association meetings and voice our opinions, stand up and vote, and they're the ones that are listening, and they can go make a change happen right there. And that's what I think is important in the political arena.
You know, we hear all the time agriculture is the state's biggest industry. Conversations like that show it is happening all over, including right in the city.
I love it. I can only grow green onions, so maybe he can teach me something new.
I'm sure he will. He's got a green thumb.
I love it. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope to see you back here next Sunday at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote.